What's up, guys? Justin here with TheSketchUpEssentials.com, back with another SketchUp speed modeling tutorial for you. So in today's video, I'm going to model a larger space that I'm then going to try to take into my rendering program and start testing some mirror settings. And I thought this would be a good video to just kind of show you my workflow for creating a big, simple space like this. So before we get started, today's video is brought to you by my supporters on Patreon. Patreon, as most of you know, is the website where you can support creators that you like on YouTube. So if you like what I'm doing on this channel, make sure you check out that link in the notes down below. Now let's go ahead and just jump into it. All right, so as always, what we're going to do is we're going to rough out our floor footprint. So in this case, this is going to be kind of a larger area. I'm going to move my default model out of the way because I like to start by centering everything on the origin. It just gives me a good place to start. But I'm going to start off and just draw probably a 50 to 60 foot long line. We're going to say 50 feet long. And I'm just going to move my default model down here to get kind of an idea of the scale. So that's one of the nice things about having a default model is if that's scaled properly, you can use that to kind of figure out how large a space is going to be. So I'm thinking this probably needs to be at least 10 feet longer. So I'm going to go ahead and draw another 10 feet onto the end of this. And I'm just going to rough this out by drawing a width of probably, since this is going to be kind of a larger, almost a dance studio space, let's say it's probably going to be about 40 feet wide. So it's going to be a pretty large rectangle. So something like this is going to be about the footprint of this space that we want in here. And I may come in and add something along the end here, but this will kind of give me a starting point. And so in this case, what I want this to be is I want this to be kind of a pre-manufactured metal building. So what I want to do is I want to come in here, and probably what I can do first is I can go ahead and pull this up to give me a rough sizing of this space again. And my assumption in this case is this is going to be something like 12 or 14 feet on the sidewalls. I think I'll do 12 feet high and hit the enter key. And so that's just me pulling this up to that height. And so now that I have that in here at this height, I can come in and I can start working on modeling out my trusses. So the first thing I'm going to do is, my assumption is I'm going to get probably another 5 or 6 feet in gain in the middle. So the size of this space is going to be about another 5 feet taller. So I just drew a line up about 5 feet. Then I'm going to pull this across. And you can see how when I do this, this is taking this face and it's making this kind of hollow because it's moving this front face backwards. Well, all you need to do to fix that is just tap the control key. That'll activate create new face mode, which you can then use to extrude this back without this deleting this front face. And so I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to reverse this face. And probably I'm also going to erase out this edge on both sides. And so now what I want to do is I want to come in and I want to start building my trusses. And so to build my trusses, probably what I'm going to start off with is I'm just going to take this whole thing and I'm just going to make it a group. And the reason I'm going to make it a group is because I just don't want this merging with the geometry that I'm going to create from a truss standpoint. And I'm probably going to come back and organize this a little bit in the outliner a little bit later. But for now, I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to select, I'm going to double click in this group and I'm going to take these two faces and I'm going to hide them. So I'm just going to select them and I'm going to click hide. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow me to come in here and that's going to allow me to work. And so I'm also going to reverse all of these faces, because if I do a rendering, the rendering of this space is going to be on the inside. And so I want the front side of my faces facing towards whichever side I'm going to render it. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw out the structural supports for this building. And so the way that I'm going to do that is I'm just going to draw some edges in here, draw some paths that this can move along. So I'm going to start off and I'm just going to draw a raw edge right here. And so now that I've drawn this edge, what I want to do is I want to rough out the shape of a steel support. And so I'm just going to come down to this end and I'm just going to draw a line down a little bit. And let's say these supports are going to be 12 inches deep. So I'm just going to draw a line down about 12 inches. So, and even that's probably a little bit big. These may actually be about 6-inch supports. And then I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to rough out kind of the shape. So I'm just going to draw a profile or a flat face, kind of representing about what the size of these is going to be. And they don't need to be super accurate. Since this isn't like a structural model or anything like that, I don't really need these to be ultra accurate. I just need them to be close enough that they look like the structural supports that I want them to represent. So I'm going to measure this across the middle, and this is showing that this is about 4 inches wide. So I think I'm good with this to start with. And so I'm just going to extrude this shape down until it's level with the other side here. And you can see how this top piece is going to be a little bit different, just because the ridge of the roof comes up here, and so it needs to be centered along this face. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this, I'm going to make this a component, and we're just going to call this structural beam 6 inches. And since I made this a component, if I make copies of this and I edit one, the others will change as well. And so what I want to do now is I want to draw a line from this edge to this edge, and then I'm going to right click on that and I'm going to divide it. And so I'm going to divide it into whatever the number of segments I need in order to create my supports here. So in this case, I think 6 segments is going to be just fine. And so I'm going to take this and I'm going to make a copy using the move tool, and I'm going to center this copy right on this midpoint. What you're going to notice right here is that this isn't actually level with the roof, so you need to use the rotate tool in order to adjust this. So you can see how I just used the rotate tool and I just centered it on this middle rotation point in order to rotate that. And then now I'm going to use the move tool in copy mode to create the rest of my copies. So I'm just going to make a copy here, and then I'm going to type in ×4 and hit the enter key. That'll make 4 unique copies of this object equally spaced between this point, based on the spacing between this point and this point. And so then I can just take these and I can just, probably I'll take the front edge as well. That'll just make things a bit easier. And then I'll just use the move tool in copy mode again to copy these over. And then I'm going to use the scale tool to flip this. And then I'm going to move this back right here. And so now what we need to do is we need to create our supports that are going to run this way. And so in order to do that, probably the easiest way is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to erase out these lines. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to unhide this. And then I'm just going to draw a line from this edge to this edge. And now I'm going to copy it straight down to the bottom of this steel piece. And I'm going to go ahead and move this up, and I realize that gives me a little bit of overlap right here, but I'm just going to kind of roll with that for right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing where I draw a profile of the shape, the structural shape that I want to create. So in this case, let's say this is going to be 18 inches deep by 6 inches wide or something like that. And so in this case, I'm going to make this an I-beam. So I'm just going to give this a little bit of thickness using the move tool in copy mode. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to erase out this extra stuff. And so I have my I-beam shape roughed out, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move this edge, and then I'm going to use the scale tool to flip it. And you could also right click and do a flip along if you wanted to. But the reason I'm doing this is now I can select both of these edges, and since they're continuous, I can use the follow me tool to extrude this whole shape. So you can see how that gives me my nice I-beam shape right here. And it looks like I've lost one of my edges here. So I'm just going to place that back in here. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to triple click on this I-beam and I'm going to reverse the faces and I'm going to make that a component as well. And in this case I'm going to call this structural beams 18 inches. So that's going to be the depth. And if you have actual structural plans, you may name these a little bit different, but I don't. So we're just going to leave this. So that's how I'm going to name that. And so again, I'm going to use the move tool in copy mode. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this down here. Using copy mode. And then you can see how I can hold the shift key in order to lock this inference to the green axis. I'm just going to click on this point right here. And you can see how that created a point here and a point here. So really what I want is for there to be 4 of these big supports in here. So I'm going to type in divided by 3 and hit the enter key. What that's going to do is that's going to create 3 equally spaced copies between this point and this point. So you can see how now I have 4 total. So now I have my space kind of roughed out here, and I'm probably going to come in and add a little bit of thickness to this a little bit later on, just because having thin walls or thin faces like this doesn't always render out very well. And so now what I want to do is I want to take this same I-beam shape, and so I'm just going to take this face and I'm just going to do a copy. So I selected the face and I'm going to do a paste, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude this same profile along this length right here. So in order to do that, we're going to have to take that face that we just copy pasted and we're going to have to stand it up real quick. So we'll just use the rotate tool. We'll just rotate it here as well. And we can actually extrude this on the ground and then move it up. That may be a little bit easier because we don't have to deal with it accidentally inferencing to anything down there. So I'm just going to draw a path here. I'm going to use the follow me tool. And I'm just going to triple click on this. I'm going to make this a component. And then we'll just move this beam up until it kind of inferences to this point right here. And depending on how detailed you want to be, you could definitely come in here if you wanted to and take this edge and move it right up so that everything kind of inferences exactly the way that it should. You can even model the connections if you really wanted to. Probably what I'm going to do in this case is I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to take this face and I'm going to pull it back a bit so that the intersection isn't quite so pronounced, and I'm just going to leave it as is. But you can definitely come in here and model these at some point if you really want to. It's just not really helpful for the purpose of what I'm doing with this video, what I'm trying to create. And then I'm just going to use the rectangle tool, and if you remember with the rectangle tool, you can actually tap the control key to create a rectangle about center. So you can see how that allows me to create a rectangle that's centered on this midpoint. And I'm just going to draw a 4" by 4" rectangle here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right click and I'm going to make this a component. I'm going to call this structural post. And I'm just going to extrude that down to the ground. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to make a copy of this using the move tool. Down on the other end down here. And so I'm going to inference this along the green axis to the midpoint of this structural beam. And then we'll take both of these and we can just use the midpoint of this beam. Actually, I think we need to move the whole beam over there too. So we're just going to select all 3 of these and we're just going to make a copy using the move tool. Here we go. Along the red axis. And probably if we wanted to, we could make that a component. That's probably a good idea in case we go back in and edit the way that this beam interfaces. So we'll just make this a component and we'll just call this structural group. So the other thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit of thickness to the outside of this, because right now these are just planes with no thickness on them, and I really want them to have a bit of thickness because a lot of rendering programs don't do super well with just flat faces like that. So I'm just going to select all of these edges and offset them out by about 6 inches. And I'll just draw lines across these edges here. That'll give me a face. There we go. So now we've got a little bit of thickness along the outside. So now if we were to come into this space using something like the position camera tool and just set this up so that it's looking along here, wow, that did not do what I thought it would. Okay, there we go. So we're going to type in an eye height of like, we'll say 6 feet. And we can look around inside of this space and we can see that we've got our space pretty well roughed out. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a camera with a wider field of view. So I'm going to click on the zoom tool over here and I'm just going to type in a value of like 65. You can see how that gives me a much wider camera view, which means I can see more in here. And so I'm going to take a look. I'm going to do an edit, unhide all. I think I need to be in this group for that to work. I'm going to do an edit, unhide all. That's going to unhide the walls on the two ends. This gives me kind of an idea of what this space is going to look like if I set my camera up inside of it. So there's a couple other things I need to do in here now. The first is I want to start adding light fixtures. So this, in this case, this space is going to have some light fixtures that kind of hang down along the edges. So I'm probably going to do, I'll probably do like 4 of them. And so I'm just going to model those out real quick. And so to start off, what I'm going to do here, just to make this easier on myself, I'm just going to draw a guideline right here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw these hanging down. So in this case, they're probably going to hang down just a bit below this edge right here. And they don't need to be super complex, because probably what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to use some kind of a like rectangular strip light or something like that inside of V-Ray in order to get the actual lighting, or whatever program we end up using. So all I'm going to do for right now is I'm just going to draw these as rectangles. So something like 3 inches thick. And I'll just extrude this across to about right there. So just kind of a simple shape for right now. We can come back in and edit it a little bit more if we decide that we want to later. But I'm just going to right click, I'm going to make that a group. And in a minute we're going to make it a component. But I'm also going to make each one of these supports a component, and in this case I'm going to make these probably a 12-sided circle, because they don't need to be super detailed. We're not going to get really in close with these, so we don't want to create too much geometry with these for right now. So we'll start off with something like this. That circle's probably a little bit big. And I'm just going to double click on this real quick, and I'm going to make this a component, and we'll just call this light. Hanger. Uncheck the box for create opening, because I don't need this to cut an opening in anything. And we'll just extrude it up. And that's a component, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create probably something like this. So I have 3 of them in here. And then I'm just going to make a copy using the move tool. So now I've got this kind of hanging light that's in here. And then I can take this, and so I'm going to make a copy so that this is sitting in this space right here, and then I'm going to use the move tool in copy mode again to make a copy here. And then finally I'll make a copy across here. Then I never really did this before, but I'm going to do a view, animation, and I'm going to add a scene in order to save this scene. So now I've got kind of a first-person view of what this space is going to look like. Then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to add some materials. And so in this case, since this is a dance studio, we're probably going to have mirrors to probably about the height of this bottom piece, actually. So we're just going to draw a line along this face all the way to the other wall. So what that's going to do is that's going to split this face up into something we can apply a material to. So now we can come in here and we can add a material like a mirror material. And one thing we might want to think about is we might want to think about breaking this up into individual pieces of geometry with a little bevel between them. I'm not going to mess around with that too much for right now, but we've got that material in here. We're going to add a wood material to the floor. Then we may add some accent paint to this back wall. So and then I'm also going to give this exterior wall a little bit of thickness too, so I'm just going to pull this out by about 6 inches. I'll pull this out by about 6 inches as well. And I'm going to do that on both sides. And then we can click on this scene to go back to our interior view. And I'm going to go back in and add the rest of my materials, but I think I'm going to speed this up because this video is getting pretty long. I didn't really want it to be this long. So I'm going to go ahead and just adjust some materials, and then we'll come back and call it good. Alright, so I think I'm going to call this good. I may create another video where I come in and add different things and then render this, but I'd love to hear from you guys. I know this is a longer form video than I usually do on stuff like this. I really wanted to kind of get into the details of what I was doing, but I'd love to hear what you guys think about this format. If you like this video, please remember to click that like button down below. If you're new around here, remember to click that subscribe button for new SketchUp content every week. If you like what I'm doing on this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Every little bit helps, even if it's only $1 a month. So make sure you check out that link in the notes down below. But in any case, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I really appreciate it. I will catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.